Awesome. Well, hey, thank you everyone for joining this webinar today. So again, we're going to be providing an overview of the 6 IT automations to streamline the IAM security and device management, which is brought to you by JumpCloud and Torq. Next slide, please. So just a few housekeeping items that we'd like to go over before we begin the webinar here. Basically, it's going to be broken out into 2 different sections here, where the first part, we're going to spend around 45 minutes covering the use cases of how JumpCloud and Torq are able to help you automate and streamline and enhance the end user and administrative experience. And we're also going to show how JumpCloud's able to provide the core IAM and device management functionality. Now, towards the end of the presentation, there'll be around 10 minutes for question and answer period. So please feel free to drop any questions that you have into the Q&A chat box, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can here. Next slide, please. So just a few more things. Let's introduce our group of expert panelists here. First off, we're joined by Derek Johnson, which is our Principal Product Manager of Platform Experience at JumpCloud. And Derek has over 25 years of product management experience in technology with a heavy emphasis on data and business workflows. And right now, he's currently working on orchestration and how it all gets tied together across the JumpCloud platform. Next up, we have Anar Israeli, the Director of Security at Torq, and he has extensive experience in various different security domains, including architecture, engineering, operations in the cybersecurity industry. And he's most passionate and skilled in log management, SIM, incident response, and of course, after hours, he moonlights as a Python coder, taking the security operations to the next level at Torq. And finally, there's me. I'm the moderator of this discussion here, and I'm the Senior Technical Marketing Manager over at Torq. And I have around 2 decades of industry experience with a unique blend of network security architecture, consulting, and a background in spearheading technology market strategy. Now with that, let's jump over to JumpCloud.
Awesome, thanks Dallas. As Dallas said, my name is Derek Johnson. I'm a Principal Product Manager at JumpCloud. And for those that aren't familiar with JumpCloud, let's jump into some details on what JumpCloud is. JumpCloud is an IT management platform that's really about enabling organizations to connect their employees to any resource, regardless of what that resource is, from any location in the world, from a trusted device based upon the policies that have been put in place on that device, with one secure identity, all from the cloud. Through our open directory approach, we know that organizations, the way that they manage identities can be complex. And through our open directory approach, whether they're managing their identities directly on the JumpCloud platform or elsewhere, being able to aggregate all of that identity information together and verify that the user is who they say they are, and then once verified, be able to go to a device that we see as the gateway to resources, as the kind of how a user is going to access the resources they need to do their job. And verifying that that's a trusted device based upon the policies that have been put in place, then give them access to the resources that they need to complete their day-to-day job. And this is all done via the JumpCloud platform. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Dallas. Uh-oh.
There we are, we're back. And so, hey, thanks, Derek. I'm just going to give you the brief 30-second introduction to Torq here before we jump into the use cases. So, as we like to say when we're in an elevator to any prospects, Torq is the enterprise-grade security hyper-automation platform that allows us to unify and automate your entire infrastructure in security stack. And what this really allows you to do is drive maximum value and efficiency by using your existing best-of-breed tools that you've already purchased and acquired, and actually supercharge your investments by being able to create powerful and easy-to-use no-code, low-code, and full code workflows that are going to reduce all of your manual and rote tasks that you do on a daily basis. And what this ultimately allows you to do as a highly in-demand security professional is it'll free up your time and resources so that you can focus on significantly higher value strategic activities with the power of automation and orchestration. Next slide.
So today we're here to talk about automation and how we can make both IT admins' lives and end customer users' lives easier. And so one of the things we want to talk about is why is JumpCloud and Torq better together as an automation tool? And so at JumpCloud, our vision is to make work happen. We want to make our customer organizations more productive. And in all of the use cases that we build, they're all built around making the everyday tasks of an IT admin or an end user more efficient. And we do this through orchestration. You'll hear me use the word orchestration throughout today, but there's a layer of orchestration that exists that does all the things that I described on the previous slide, whether it's the verification of an identity based upon who that user is and them verifying themselves, whether it's ensuring that the device is a trusted device based upon the policies. All that's done through orchestration with a focus on security. And so when you layer in automation on top of that, that augments the value that much more. And so Dallas, on the Torq side, go ahead.
All right, so let's just go over 3 quick value props here. So with the power of Torq, what we're going to be able to allow and empower you to do is really unify all of your disparate security tools. And it doesn't matter if your security tools or even your infrastructure you're trying to protect is either on-premise, in a hybrid cloud, or a pure SaaS environment. We're able to connect and unify all of those together into one centralized platform to allow you to automate any of the tasks. And then secondly, anyone, not just seasoned developers or highly specialized security professionals, are able to rapidly develop and implement Torq workflows in minutes. And the reason for this is that we've got a powerful, intuitive, and straightforward interface. So if you're not a coder like myself, you can use the no-code platform to drag and drop automations with providers like JumpCloud, for example, with expert curated templates and workflow libraries. And if you are a seasoned pro like Anair, you can code in Python, you can do whatever you want and drag and drop that code right into the interface, as easy as that. And then finally, you're able to connect to absolutely any system across your security stack through our open architecture. And like we said before, you're able to unify your IAM, your device management, and your security policy and configuration with the complete power of automation across all the security tools. Now, Derek and Anair are going to walk you through the 6 top use cases where you'll get to experience Torq's workflow automation capabilities combined with JumpCloud's evolving orchestration. On to use case number 1.
Let's jump into it. So the way that we're going to go through each of these use cases is I'll do a little bit of an introduction, and then I'll talk about how the IT admin would do either part of that use case or all of that use case within the console or via the JumpCloud API. And then I'll hand it over to Anair, and he'll guide us through the automation and the solution that Torq is built on top of that. So this first use case is all about the elevation of local admin privileges. So Anair, go ahead and go to the next slide. And so this is a pretty common exercise where an IT admin is going to get a request from a user that, hey, they need local admin privileges on a device, let's say, in order to complete a task. Well, that's something that isn't dealt with lightly by a lot of organizations when it comes to giving people that level of privilege. And so there's the request that takes place. The IT admin would typically go in some way and elevate that privilege and then have to remember that they need to remove that privilege after that task has been completed. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you within the JumpCloud platform. And again, this is the console view. You could also do this via API, which is how Anair has built a lot of the great automation that he's going to show. But in this case, you can go into the user and you could go into the permission settings for that user. You could check the box. And that enables them to have that global admin or sudo privileges on their devices. But again, the admin's going to have to go after the fact once that task is complete and remove this. And so, Anair, show us a different way to do this in a better way.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. So this is actually how the workflows goes. So the employees gets to Slack and enrolls the process simply by running a Slack/ command. The event is then received on Torq's end by the Slack / command trigger. And we're enriching the workflow context with the requester info by invoking JumpCloud API through the search for specific user step. In parallel, but not rendered here, a few security and posture checks are running to make sure the request is legit. If the checks are passed, a welcome message is sent, and a training message saying that a one-time token will be sent to the employee's alternate email address. Now, alternate email address may sound familiar as a JumpCloud property, which taken from the search for specific user we used previously. Now here is another portion from the workflow where we make sure to populate the alternate email JumpCloud property in advance. This is, by the way, done through our automated onboarding process at Torq. So if the property is missing, so the employee will be notified to reach out IT and fix the issue appropriately. However, if the alternate email is available, so we go ahead and generating a unique string serves as a one-time token. This token then sent over email to the user. This is how the email actually looks like. And then the user will have to copy the token and paste it to the Slack text box we see here. On submission, a validation process kicks in. And if the validation is okay, we go ahead and utilize JumpCloud API to list systems associated with the user. This is because some employees are using more than one device. Afterwards, employee will have to choose the designated device from the dropdown you see on the right. Then the employee selects the access duration, which is actually the just-in-time property. Then we JumpCloud API invokes to elevate permissions. And if all goes well, a confirmation message is sent with the selected time cap. Then for waiting the selected time cap, we are simply using Torq's wait operator. Once duration is overdue, permission revocation kicks in and the employee is notified accordingly. Derek, back to you, as this sums up the whole flow.
Yeah, this is great. And think about how much time that process saved the IT admin and how much more secure the experience is for the organization when it comes to providing that elevated privilege. I think this is exactly what we're talking about, how automation on top of the orchestration layer can improve things dramatically from an efficiency perspective and a security perspective. All right, use case number 2 is all about group membership. And groups are very powerful tools on the JumpCloud platform. It's typically the way that you bind a user to a particular resource. And so the membership that a user has in a user group is hugely impactful throughout the rest of the JumpCloud environment. And so in this case, we're going to have a new user that's coming on board, and we're going to go through a typical flow where an IT admin in the normal world would have to know, okay, yeah, this user belongs to this group, so therefore I need to go ahead and add them to the group. And the IT admin may not always have that information. And so in this situation, we're going to go through a flow where there's some automation built in, there's an approval process, and then if approved, the user goes ahead and gets added to the user group, thus giving them access to the resources they need to do their job. And so if you go to the next slide, in the JumpCloud platform, we can do this a couple of different ways. And again, you can do all of this via API as well. But what I'm showing you here is going into the user directly and clicking over to the user groups tab and selecting the group that they need to be bound to or that they need to be a member of. You could also do the inverse where you could go to the user groups directly and then go to the users tab and you can select that user being a member of that group as well. But Anair is going to show you a much more elegant way through automation to make this even better.
Thanks, Eric. So here are the HR platforms actually triggering a Torq workflow through a webhook. Now, the HR platform payloads include a few properties, such as hiring manager details and the designated department. That's allowing us to interact with the hiring manager and the relevant group. So in this case, we see a message sent to the hiring manager asking him to append his new mate to the group. One thing important to outline here before I continue is we did a preliminary work within the group naming convention to reach alignment between the HR and JumpCloud group names to avoid errors, actually. So if the manager approves by using list user groups, we extract the group ID for the next step. And finally, we invoke add user to group API to initialize step with the user and the group IDs accordingly. This three simple steps workflow can be a part of a larger onboarding process and can purely act as a nested workflow within. Derek, back to you.
So as I said in the beginning of this, use case groups is hugely powerful. And at JumpCloud, I'll share a little bit of roadmap with you guys. We're investing in the dynamic group space, both on user groups and device groups. We've introduced a component of this on the user group side via our suggestions capability, but we're going to extend that into a fully automated dynamic user group, as well as offer that on the devices side as well. So over the next few months, you'll see us be making some pretty dramatic improvements to the overall kind of dynamic group approach and any automation that you would want to build around the power of both user groups and device groups. Okay. So the next one takes us to just-in-time access to an SSO application. So in this case, think of your crown jewel applications where you have your most important data existing and really wanting to control who has access to those applications and when. And so this is a very much a just-in-time approach of, again, a user making a request and verifying that that user is who that they say they are, and giving them access to those applications just long enough for them to be able to complete the tasks that they need to complete. Maybe a short-term thing, it may be a long-term thing, but having control over that and then removing that access once that time period runs out. So if you go to the next slide, in the JumpCloud platform, we give you a way to have an alternate email there's a back and forth via Slack or email. Of being able to do some kind of verification that that user is who they say they are, the ones that's requesting this access. But again, it's the group membership that drives the access to an SSO application. And so this one will show you how elegantly via the API, once that user's been verified, to be able to go in and then change their membership such that they have access to those applications. So go ahead, Anair.
Thanks. So what you see here is an identical process to what we've presented in the get me admin use case. Also here, /command ignites the workflow. And once being received on Torq's end, we call for a search for specific user API for validation and extract alternate email property. In parallel, we are doing two things. First, we are validating the alternate email is actually available. And then we send an hello message to the user. If the alternate email exists and the user approved by clicking yes, we are moving on.
Perfect. All right, this one I like as well, just because of the time component and the additional layer of security. Keep going. Sorry, I'm taking over for you.
No worries. So back to the story. If the token validation is okay, the employee selects the access duration, the all good just-in-time property. And then we invoke JumpCloud add user to user group API call. If the call went successfully, a confirmation message is sent with the selected time cap. Then for waiting the selected time cap, we are using Torq's wait operator. Once duration is overdue, permission revocation kicks in, and the employee again is notified accordingly. Derek.
All right, sorry to jump in there. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll go to the next one. Yep, so failed logins. Failed logins happen. Like that's a real thing. We know sometimes there's nothing nefarious there, but we also know that could be a huge, risk vector that could implicate a bigger security problem. So this is all about being able to know that a certain number of failed logins have occurred for a particular user, and being able to give the admin the tools that they need to either go verify it or to be able to take further action based upon they've deemed it to be not real and to be a risky thing. So in the JumpCloud world, if you go to the next slide, we have a part of our product called Directory Insights. And so this is all, and I've even seen some questions about logging, and so I'll talk a little bit about it here, but via Directory Insights, we give you the ability to know pretty much everything that's going on within the JumpCloud environment, who has access to what, when they've accessed it, log on times, log off times, all those kinds of things via Directory Insights. These are all the logs that are occurring within the JumpCloud domain. And so there's a predefined list that's called failed system login attempts. And so it's an easy way for you to filter down into these failed logins. You could further filter down based upon time. You could filter down based upon the user and various attributes. But the thing I like about what we're going to show in a second is the ability to kind of set what that threshold should be and get a notification of what you need, that you have a large number of failed logins. So Eric, go ahead and take over.
So here we go. Once the workflow is triggered, we're using Torq parallel step to query both IP reputation from abuse IPDB and virus total. Results are then returned and sent as a Slack snippet along with the alert for better decision making. Slack alert is sent to the user, stating, we see here that a few consecutive fail logins were detected on his behalf. If the user admits and click yes, the flow ends with greetings and logged to our SIM. On the other hand, if the user answers no, then the security teams gets an indication and the option to suspend the user's account. If security wish to suspend the user, we invoke JumpCloud's suspend user API call, which suspend the user in both JumpCloud and Google. Additionally, we create an IOC indicator using the source failed login IP to detect egress traffic and to negate data exfiltration. And finally, opening a ticket to follow the case. So just to recap here, what we see here is a semi-automated workflow, because sometimes a further investigation is required actually. In a non-SOC environment, in a non-SOC environment, we harness the employee to the mitigation process and engaging him or her, obviously, with the findings. You can't always fully automate processes, though we can definitely benefit from semi-automated flows as they also reduce time and effort. Derek.
No, that's what I was going to say. I really like the combination of both automation and giving the capability for the admin to take further action. And we see cases like this all the time where it's not as easy as just it being fully automated. The goal, though, is to get to a managed by exception environment. And that's one of the things when you think about automation, you think about orchestration, is getting to that point where you're whittling down what you're touching to something as small as possible. So, all right, takes us to the next one. So we talked earlier about the device being the gateway to resources. And so how a user, once a user's been verified and they're bound to a particular device, is that device in compliance with the policies that's been implemented on it? And so when a device falls out of compliance with those intended policies, the IT admin needs to know, and it's likely that they're going to have to take some kind of action based upon that. But the first step is knowing. And so within the JumpCloud platform, go ahead and go to the next slide. Within the console, you have the ability to go into a particular policy and see the status of the devices that have that policy tied to it. We also give you some reports through JumpCloud reports for certain policies like OS patch, browser patch, that aggregate all of that data into one view. But being able to know, at a moment's notice, hey, what are the devices I have in my room that are out of compliance? So and so Anera's going to show you a much more elegant way to pull all that together. And this will be another case where further action is likely going to be necessary. It's difficult to fully automate this use case, but I think Anera's going to show you a much more efficient way to get there.
Thank you. So before I begin for this workflow, we initialized it with a pre-made list of JumpCloud policies we use at Torq. First, we are looping through the pre-made list with a loop step, Torq loop step. For each policy, we get its latest status by executing get policy status step. And then we are focusing on the success property marked here in red. With the extract failed policies only, we generate an array based on the events that success is false, hence failures. Then we collecting the array's results, and then iterating again through the collected data, which is failed policies inherited. To get an additional system info with a system ID key value, we are executing get system info step. Finally, we have results to generate a nice Slack form report with the finding and its corresponding device. For making it easier and intuitive, we made a device name clickable to get us straight to the device page in the JumpCloud console. Derek.
I like this one because it takes you all the way back into the location you probably are going to need to go in order to take further action. So that's really cool. All right, let's go to the next one, our last one, I think. So yeah. User gets locked out of their account. A locked out user is an unproductive user who can't do their job, can't do their day-to-day tasks. So in this case, being able to communicate with that user via Slack, they have access to their phone, and so they were going to make a request that says, hey, I need to get my device or my account unlocked again. And so what we're going to show you is an easy way to go do that. So, but within the JumpCloud platform, go ahead and go to the next slide. Via the console, and Anera alluded to this in the previous one where he was suspending the user based upon the decision that was made. In this case, we would go into the user and we could very easily switch them from suspended to activated via the console. And this could also be done by API. But what Anera is going to show you is a much more secure way and efficient way to handle that communication and do some verification, some user verification prior to activating them again.
So, as the computer is useless, employee should grab his phone and execute the / command as we see here. Once pinned, security checks kicks in to ensure validation. Then we invoke the search for specific user JumpCloud step to extract details of the user, such as the all good alternate email address. A Slack message and an email is sent with a one-time token we generated, pretty similar to the get me admin process. And the user pays the token for validation. If all goes well, unlock API code is triggered. Actually, this workflow concludes the use cases we wish to share. And now I would like to summarize a few accomplishments we gained with the previous workflow we presented. The first one is crown jewels access is just-in-time based. So first and foremost, as part of our risk program, we identified our crown jewels, and in addition to other access controls, we've also added the just-in-time. Second one is that we lowered endpoint attack surface risk by removing admins while maintaining business continuity. I believe that security should be a business enabler. Means if you're implementing a security control, make sure there's a compensation in the form of an application, for example. The third one is added additional layer of identification utilizing the alternate email. So the notion here is using a whole different identity, the private rather the corporate one, for identification purposes. The fourth is zero IT intervention. So classic repetitive task, not engaging IT at all. So as we saw, aggregated failed logins alerts generate repetitive tasks for SOC. They can be called the white noise that should be handled automatically. And the last one is build workflow with a security by design. So automate stuff is obviously great. However, make sure again to compensate them with validation intersections. So all these accomplishments are derived of risk in the wild, company policy, or compliance and governance requirements. Implementing just-in-time approach is finally a decision. It could be derived of company policy, as unfortunately not all vendors support that. So as you saw, we can do it with only duplicating a few steps, taking them from one workflow to another, and all that to strengthen our boundaries. Dallas.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks very much for that summary and the amazing overview by Derek and Anair here. So we actually have quite a few questions streaming in from the audience so far. So I want to start with question number 1 from Darius. And he asks, for the local admin privileges, will there be tracking of the actions that the user did with the local admin privileges? And I'm going to start with Derek and hand it over to Anair.
Yeah, so as I said during one of the use cases, I talked a little bit about directory insights. And so via directory insights, the admin would have access to the logs associated with that user and that device that are taking place within the JumpCloud realm. That being said, we're not going to capture every single piece that user is doing within that device itself. And so our recommendation would be to leverage another third-party tool, something like CrowdStrike or something, to be able to capture even more logging that is occurring on that device itself. And so, Anair, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think that you can do it. As you saw, we can get into the workflow actually a few integrations and steps to basically enrich the whole context of the workflow. And then if you want to append or correlate actually events from other systems or services, you can actually do it by just utilizing some other steps from, as Derek just mentioned, CrowdStrike, for example. And we previously saw it that we can actually utilize CrowdStrike steps to add IOCs to the system.
Awesome. Hey, thanks guys for that one. We have another pretty good question that came in, and this is regarding HRIS platform support. And the question is, does Torq and JumpCloud support the Rippling platform? And I'll start with you, Anair.
Yes, absolutely. Basically, Torq supports anything that has an API, period. So I believe that these two vendors you mentioned, they have a vast API, so we can use them no time.
And on the JumpCloud side, as I stated early on, and with our approach from an open directory perspective, we fully recognize that organizations are going to manage their identities potentially in a multitude of ways. And so being able to integrate as many solutions as possible into our open directory approach with at the end of the day, the verification happening on the JumpCloud platform, that's where we want to be. And so you'll see us continue to evolve our integrations over time. We're continuously adding. So that's the approach that we take.
Oh, perfect. Wow, you guys are really good at these questions. They're just streaming in right now. So here's another one that I'll start with Anair on. It's from Jan here. The question is, if a user requests...
Sorry.
We'll start that again. You know, that was part of the automations here. He's getting paged. So if a user requests an elevated permission for a specific device, does it need approval by someone, or are those permissions granted automatically? And so basically it's asking, is there manual intervention required every time for approval, or for higher profile people like maybe a CEO or something, they can automatically have their rights elevated by default?
Purely depends on the use case, the team, how many SOX analysts are there. You can, where places when a one-man show, then you don't have much options than to mostly automate. I won't say anything, but most of the stuff. However, if you aren't sure and you want some intersection in between, yes, I would recommend in more sensitive intersections, yes, do it semi-automated to have someone check what's going on, what happened, and approve it accordingly.
Got it. That makes sense here. So basically it can be as fully automated as you'd like it to be, or is manual as you would like it to be with intervention. I like that. The next question is from another Derek here, and the question is, are we able to leverage the existing JumpCloud multi-factor authentication instead of an alternative email, or even in tandem to that? And Derek, I'll pass it over to you first.
No, I was going to ask Anair that. Like, I would imagine that you, via the API, could leverage JumpCloud's two-factor authentication capability and that be part of the Torq side of things. But I'll leave it to Anair to confirm that.
Yeah, you can do it. However, we also know a company used the Duo for that. You know, it's a matter of something you have, something you own as a 2FA. Yeah, again, you can do it. However, we wanted to stay close back to the collaboration within Slack.
Yeah. I think just, I mean, at the end of the day, to add a little bit to the two-factor authentication, our attitude at JumpCloud is the same approach that you just described, which is, you know, something you have. And so we're continuously evolving that capability, but have a very robust two-factor authentication today. I use it every day. Take my little finger and I put it on my computer, and you know, I verify who I am, and it works very seamlessly. So I can see the value there as well.
Yeah, I like that. So Chris Thompson brings up a pretty good question. Hey, is it required that we use the user's personal email address for this? Basically, he's asking, hey, if their local account is taken over by attackers, then they could potentially see and approve a lot of these different actions here, which is all pretty valid. So, Anair, I'm going to start with you on, hey, what are some of the other multi-factor approaches we could support that are API-based or otherwise, and then pass it to Derek.
Yeah, so any MFA vendor we can do and to integrate with. Well, it depends. You can look at the private email addresses as a risk, right? But the notion was that in case the corporate one is breached, so we want to make sure that the notion here is that the alternate one, which is the private one, is still safe. So that was the notion, the approach for this workflow. And again, if the MFA vendor supports an API, so we can use it and integrate it within the workflow immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I was going to say it too, is that the assumption there is what's been breached is the corporate ID or the corporate email. Having that alternate email can come in handy in a multitude of use cases. And so, but I do agree with Anair, like if we're better off to have a layer of security that involves the two-factor authentication, we could do that as well. So
yeah, that's perfect. So in theory, we could support, I don't know, if the provider had SMS, if it had multi-factor app on your phone or anything in between, you can do that and we can unlock it that way also, versus alternate email addresses solely. Okay, just wanted to make sure of that. And then hopefully we've got time for probably 2 more questions here. The other question that we have from Jim in the audience is, as we know with automation, APIs are constantly changing. So how does JumpCloud and Torq keep up with those API changes without breaking the integrations? And I'll start with you, Anair.
All right. So at Torq, steps, which are the applicative piece making the HTTP calls, are an essential and significant part of the product. And for that, we have amazing dedicated content and research team that are making sure that all steps and API calls are up to date anytime. And additionally, Torq also provides an elastic step, kind of a built-in Postman feature that could help overcome API changes for application Torq does not support, such as on-prem or internal one. So eventually, if I go back to the content and research team, they will research JumpCloud's API and turn them into Torq out-of-the-box steps to use.
Perfect.
Excellent. On the JumpCloud side, we know that the APIs that we provide publicly are hugely important to both our partners and our customers. And so we're very cognizant of changes that we make. We like to provide really long lead times to any major change that we're going to make. We're constantly adding to it. And so we always have that mindset. But we use APIs just like Torq does. And so our approach is we have very deep partnerships with our integration partners, and we also build a ton of testing that is regularly testing those endpoints to perform the tasks that we need to perform. So we kind of hit it at both ends, but we feel like we're in a good spot to be able to continue to evolve the platform that is just continuously evolving. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, thanks, guys. So I think that brings an end to the stream of questions that were incoming there, and that puts us right on time for the end of the webinar here. So, hey, again, I want to thank Derek and Anair for putting this together and presenting all of their amazing insights and findings. And I want to thank everyone else in the audience today for joining this webinar. So with that, I think we're going to wrap things up, and looking forward to the next one. Also, before we go, there's one last thing. If you do want to try JumpCloud, there's a free 10 user and devices trial or POC that you can do to get the full experience of JumpCloud. And with Torq, you can try automating into JumpCloud with a free 30-day proof of value. So together, you can do all of those workflows and more that you saw in this webinar today. And with that, thank you again for your time, and looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Thank you.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.